So like I have this belief about work, and every time when you have an engagement, when you're working, you should leave better. You should leave happier. You should leave with more tools and more success. And unfortunately, there are lots of people out there who are not. They're leaving jobs. They're facing trauma. They're like angry. They're disgruntled. And so we're trying to fix that challenge.
Got it. So you then launch one particular app to help solve that challenge, or lots of apps, or kind of talk to me how that works?
So most of the apps that I build are tailored for the company. So like, for example, you wouldn't really go on the App Store and like download a particular app from Selfpreneur. You can try out our beta right now. We have a beta for our Life Model Compass app, which is available on lifemodel.co. But in general, like we don't really have a traditional kind of B2C model. And what that means that we get to do is we get to bootstrap and we get to build solutions directly for each of our customers.
Yeah.
And it's great because every company is so different. They really do need a tailored solution. So I have a basic kind of install package that I use to implement with different companies, and then we customize on top of that. So it's a mix of licensing plus professional services, but it also means that I don't have to take a ton of VC, and I don't have to build a huge team to manage like a monolithic code base, because I'm working on a client by client basis, but my clients are very large, so it works well for me.
This is so helpful because all throughout the day today, we've been talking about business models. We've been talking about opportunities to license your app to other companies and other businesses. So this is perfectly timely. And a lot of people are just starting to think about, because we definitely hear when you build an app, build a consumer app, right? That's just one of the things that we very often hear. Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying is that you have a totally different model and it allows you to bootstrap. Can you give us a rough range of what you are charging for like one particular app, just so people have a sense?
Yeah, so it varies by the number of licenses that we're getting, but in general, any kind of implementation is going to be upwards of $100,000.
Yeah,
because we are making it perfect for our client, and like there's a huge value in that. Like a lot of times you'll have conversations with companies and they'll say, we just want something right off of the shelf. But when you're working in a space that's highly innovative, there isn't anything that you can get right off of the shelf. So that means that you have the opportunity to, really charge an appropriate amount to deliver that innovation.
Yeah.
But the other good thing is that for your company, if you choose to do a model like that, it means that you've already proven your customer base, as a part of building your business. You've identified your customer, you've identified your business model, and you've been able to develop things that could further support other customers. So we could very easily get to the point where we launch a consumer-driven app. But honestly, I think the most important thing for a founder to do is to stay focused. And so even though sometimes there's a great opportunity, it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to take on that opportunity right now today. So for us right now, we're focusing on the experience with our enterprise clients. And then we're also building a model for coaches so that coaches can go out and approach the consumer base. So if you look at like my website, we have this concept called the life model, which is basically a canvas. And these are actual physical tools. A lot of consumers, when they're working on like issues that are like complex in their life, we think, oh, let's give them an app. And actually people don't always need apps.
Right.
And oftentimes an app is not the best thing to do, because what you're actually going to get is you're going to get everything else that's in that phone, distracting your customer from the experience you're trying to give them. Mm-hmm. So this is our approach to the consumer market right now today, but we have a vision and roadmap that continues to expand that technology, and the beta app that you can see today is an example of that.
Got it. But it makes a lot of sense for you to be focused now. If you're closing 100K kind of range contracts, it makes a lot of sense for you to play in that space. Okay, so is there a commonality between the apps that you're launching, are they similar in a lot of respects? Are they really different? Talk to us about
They're
that.
very similar. They're definitely all very similar. They're all leveraging the same underlying methodology.
Yeah.
So actually, I can sort of show a little bit of my methodology.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This will help. But this here concept here is all about, the life model. We call the life model the operating system to thrive in a world of, change. And we live in an era of change right now, wherein like the experience of this current generation versus the prior and versus what's coming next, very, very different. And so we have to be extremely agile. We have to really be flexible. And when I talk about change, I'm not talking about just regular change. I'm talking about what is artificial intelligence? How is artificial intelligence going to impact our society? It's going to impact it in large, major ways. What about robotics? Large, major ways. What about our changing political and our social systems? Major changes. So these are some of the things that people are grappling with, but they don't really realize that all of those things are having an influence on them. Mm-hmm. So the life model is basically the overall operating system, and it starts with this concept of designing your life, which is the first stage, and then discovering anything that could be affecting your life, which is the second stage, and then the third stage is making decisions, and then the fourth stage is actually taking that whatever you've learned and developing it. So choosing that thing. Maybe you want to develop a new habit. Maybe you need to create some new routines. Maybe you need to expand your network. Whatever that thing is, then you develop it during that stage. And then we also basically layer that on top of this concept of the 4 R's, which is all about rewards, reflection, relaxation, and retention, which is what actually helps you to live a healthy life and have well-being when you're in very aggressive circles. You're taking major risks. People don't understand what you're talking about because you're talking about entrepreneurship and tech and startups. So all of these things, you need to have a framework and a methodology. So all of our apps leverage that methodology, and that's patent pending. We actually just secured our design patent, which we're really excited about. That was last week. Yay!
Congratulations. So you take this framework, and I love, by the way, that you call the framework an operating system. I think a lot of times, when you're selling tech, you can kind of take these frameworks that you're using, which maybe isn't an operating system in the traditional sense that we think of it, but a lot of this, I love that you've positioned it for your customers as an operating system. I think that's really smart. So What would you say is the main problem then that your customers have that you're solving for them? Because you take this framework and apply it for them in different ways.
The main problem is that these large companies need to be able to attract the best talent, and human resources is extremely competitive. If you're building a hot startup and you need a data scientist and your competitor hires the data scientist that you want, well, you're screwed. So they need to be able to compete with regards to acquiring talent. Then they need to be able to properly develop that talent inside of the corporation. And then the third thing is they need to ensure that they can retain it. So the worst thing that can happen to your company is that you get someone who is extremely talented and effective and powerful for your business. They learn all your secrets. They learn everything. And then 2 years later, they leave and they take that to a competitor. And in California, which is where I live, most of the time people don't sign non-competes, or it's usually a non-disclosure agreement. And actually make sure you guys are signing non-disclosure agreements instead of non-competes, especially if you're passionate about this idea of being a selfpreneur, because you also need to make sure that you're maintaining your legal control and ability to be flexible and do what you need to do. So that's the main challenge that they're having, is being able to attract talent, maintain talent, and develop talent. And so we provide these methodologies that allow people to, take on these really aggressive changes into their life. Maybe your top performing person is getting ready to have a child. It doesn't matter whether they're male or female. Having a family is going to greatly affect your expectations at work and your behavior at work. That's just a fact. And if it doesn't, you're doing something wrong for your health. So if anyone's offended by that, sorry, that's the truth.
You offer these companies software that you've built, I have a couple questions about that I want to go back to. But do you also offer any type of service in addition to that, or is it exclusively that they get access to this custom platform?
No, there's always services that comes along with it. And so basically, just like your employees are changing, the technology is always changing. So you really want to make sure that when you land a customer, they are not just one and done, right? You want to continue to advance your customers. So as you get upgrades, as you get new technology, you want to be able to continue to upsell them on new capabilities. And you also want to make sure you provide a really good service agreement, which is essentially, them paying for any additional support that they may need. And that could be that they have, for us, we identify a group of employees in the company that essentially want to get certified in our methodologies. Along with that certification process, they also will generally want some additional support. So those are headcounts that we have to be able to provide. And so the service agreements, the service contracts allow that to continue on.
So really what you've done is you've taken a service-based business. It's kind of like where you are coaching people on your methodology, almost like a train the trainer kind of structure, and also your software, and you come in and sell both together is what you're saying.
Yes.
You're kind of bundling them. This is really
absolutely. And what's funny is like I learned that from major companies. Like when I was like 21 years old, I worked at a startup, and it was a bootstrap startup started by some Cal grads here in Berkeley. And we ended up getting acquired by a major company. But the way that this business stayed afloat is by essentially providing professional services. And so that's kind of how I grew up. I grew up understanding that if you can find a customer, and if your customer has a problem that's very difficult to solve, then you can solve it with professional services, and that can be your business. And you can use that to build a foundation for the apps and services that you deliver.
I love this. I tell a couple other people, these other stories, and I continue to hear these really great examples, because in a lot of industries, people maybe can't fully wrap their heads around just an app. If you're going into a more traditional industry, particularly if you're selling to enterprises, it sometimes for a lot of people goes over their head. And I keep seeing these great scenarios. I'll give you one example. There's an entrepreneur who's kind of in the apps without code ecosystem. His name is Patrick, and he's worked in the manufacturing industry, right? So like think, people building things, assembly lines, etc. Who, when you come to them and you talk about an app, they're kind of just like, we don't really know what you're talking about. And so he went in and said, well, I can consult you on how to make your process efficient. And when I come in and do the consulting, I will train everyone on how to use this great app that teaches you kind of about everything you need to know in the consulting. But he brought his app in with like the Trojan horse of something else. And it sounds like in a lot of ways, you've kind of structured this in that kind of way where there's multiple things going on that allow you to get in. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, the number one thing, if you're going to be a founder, if you're going to build something, is you have to sell whatever it is that they are willing to buy. And so, you come in and you've got your concept and you've got your services and whatever it is that you already know that you can deliver today. And you're having great conversations with customers, potential customers, prospects at that point. But when they open that door for you, they're opening that door for a relationship. So you can learn what their needs are. You can learn what their ability for risk tolerance is. You can learn what their budgets are and where their problems are outside of the areas that they brought you in to talk about. And if you can solve those problems as well, like do it. I mean, as long as it works well with your vision, then do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you made a decision not to build what we call a SaaS platform, a software as a service platform, where someone just logs in and they kind of change their own logo and they make a few little, customizations. We've all used SaaS tools before. You made a decision instead to just say, hey, there's some commonalities between all the apps, but we're going to create custom apps for every customer, as opposed to just one app where every customer can kind of, create their own little experience.
We actually did both. We
Oh,
actually
really?
did both. Yeah. So we started with the SaaS, which is the foundation, right? Which is the underlying technology that's the same across any of our customers.
Yes.
And then we build on top of that the customization that allows them to really kind of go full force with achieving their goals.
Yeah, got it. Awesome. Okay, great. So talk to us about, are you currently working a 9 to 5 job as well as being a founder?
I do. I have a 9 to 5 job and I'm a mother. So what I do for a living outside of Selfpreneur is I run product marketing for artificial intelligence Einstein platform at Salesforce. And so that's a really very privileged role that I've been able to acquire. I've been working with Salesforce for the last 10 years, and it's been an incredible joy. And so this part of my story I'm really excited to get into because this is actually the story of what it means to be a selfpreneur, how I became a selfpreneur, and how do you enroll others in the journey of you being more than just an employee. And I guarantee you, if you find the right company and the right people within that company, you can get folks to support you in being whatever it is that you need to be. As long as you're listening and understanding what's going on in that ecosystem. And so I've been with Salesforce for 10 years. I did not plan to stay that long. I thought I'd be there for a year and a half, 2 years, and then I'd bounce and go to someplace else. I'm like, I got talent, I got skills, I can go wherever I want to go. Turns out I landed in a place with a lot of incredible resources that was a growth company. And along with any growth company, there are many, many different problems to solve. So I always had great challenges that were helping to develop me. And this is, I think, really, really key for any person who has a job. If you have a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 5 or, 8 to 8, whatever it is you do, you are there for more than just a paycheck. If you're not there for more than just a paycheck, you're in the wrong place because you're there for the human capital. You're there for the networks that being in this place can help you open. You're there so that this company, this organization, and these people are also being positioned to invest in you and what you're doing. And I don't care, even if you work in like you could work at Walmart as a clerk, and you can find people that are going to invest in you in the future. So you always have to think beyond.
Can you give us some examples, like tactical examples of ways that people you've worked with in your traditional job have invested in you as an entrepreneur? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, first, my managers, right? So when I was building my product, and everyone knew what I was passionate about because I shared it in a way that wasn't like kind of like self-promoting, but I shared it in a way that was like, oh, you have a problem? Let me show you how I solved it, and I'd be happy to help you solve it.
So everyone that you work with knows that you also run another organization or company. Yeah, is that right?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I've had people inside the company contract me to run workshops, obviously contract me to build apps, contract me to offer different services. And I've also, this has been very, very just amazing. I've had customers contact me and ask me, not customers from Salesforce, to ask me not to do only things Salesforce related, but to also come and talk to their groups about life model and life model design and selfpreneur, because those are all challenges that they're facing as well, right? It's not that they have their 9 to 5, but it's also that they want to build something and they're trying to find the right support network for that.
Yeah, there's a really good question.
Another thing that's interesting, I've been able to finagle is I work with Salesforce's Ventures wing, their incubator, and I mentor companies coming through that process. Sorry, hold on one second. I'm getting a buzz. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And so I mentor startups in our ecosystem, and I work with our partners and a lot of things like that. And so that's very complementary because in this ecosystem, I'm surrounding myself with more people who are like me, with
Right.
more people who are building, who are founders, etc.
Got it. So there was a question in the audience. Stephen asked, how do you, or did you and do you manage any conflict of interest between your employment and your own business? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so there's no conflict of interest. If there was, it wouldn't work, right? And that's like the number one thing in partnership and in employment and everything. Like, you really have to make sure that where you are is a place that can nurture you and support you without conflict, because you don't want conflict. That's just bad.
Got it. Got it. So because you were personally not selling a tool or a software or a service that's competitive to Salesforce, it's okay. And because in your contract of employment, there wasn't a clause that said you can't work on other businesses while you work here, you're in an okay place.
Yeah, you do have to be very careful and make sure that you notify, your legal departments of various different things. It's also very, very helpful to make sure that you've got sponsors, executive sponsors, people inside of the company who are aware of what you're doing, who can vouch for you and recommend what you're doing and help legal departments to understand that there's no conflict. So that takes time also. So you just kind of have to always be thinking about, how am I supporting my employer with my separate entity? Like, how am I being supportive? How am I being a further asset by doing this?
Got it.
If you find that, you can get people to support you and vouch for you, and you'll have an easier route.
So you had mentioned, like getting people to support and vouch for you, and that's something that's really important in this process. Did you have to have anything that came up with a legal department, for example, where you needed to explain that to them?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, that's a voluntary process. So basically, depending on what kind of company you work for and how large it is, there'll be something in your contract that basically says, like, you have to provide notice and notification of different things that you may be working on. And so that's a proactive process that you want to work through. It isn't, it becomes very important when you start to take in money or deal with anything related to money, even if it's like volunteer related, or even if it's like serving on a board of a nonprofit. And especially if you're serving on any kind of board of any startups, because if, let's say, for example, other areas could present conflict. So you have to be very proactive about
with
that.
You specifically, where the legal department called, said there may be some conflict, and then you had to have someone vouch for you, because you mentioned having people who could vouch for you.
That hasn't happened for me. I've been very proactive. No, it's been really about being proactive and just coming up, like, one, having a plan, right? Like, knowing what I'm doing, knowing the vision of my employer, and aligning them, and being able to show that it's not just a pitch for your business. This is what I'm doing for my business. It's also a pitch of, this is what I'm doing for you, my employer.
What is your specific, what is Ayori's pitch for what you're doing for your employer? And I think the reason I'm asking is because, this may be, I feel a lot of people in the chat are trying to figure out, is this something unique to tech companies when you work for a forward-thinking tech company? Is that something that they will allow? But I'm just wondering, what was your pitch to them in terms of why this benefits them?
You know what's so funny for me? My story is a little bit different because I never actually had to pitch it. Mm-hmm. People were coming to me and asking me to do these things.
How did they know that you did
That's how my business started. Like, my business started because people were coming to me and saying, Ayori, how do you do this? How do you do that? These were employees. These were leaders and executives in the company. How do you do this? How do you do that?
And how did they know that it was something you even knew?
Well, I think what it was is people were seeing my success and my growth. So I've been in 5 different jobs in this company. And I guess it's important just to note what my background is. So I don't have a college degree. I never studied computer science in school. I'm an autodidact, so I learn everything self-paced, self-reading. I read a lot. So when I came into the company as an engineer and progressed into product management and implemented technologies for my employer, and proceeded to, be one of the top salespeople, and then proceeded to move into marketing, marketing one of the most innovative products in the world. It's like people look at that and they're like, how did that happen? Like, how are you doing that? Like, how are you here and how are you there? How are you mentoring people?
Specifics here, like people were like, how are you programming this specific thing? Like, what exactly were they asking you? How are you working?
People were asking me literally, like, how do I do what I do? Like, how are you? That's the funny part.
What? What's specific?
I don't even know how to answer that. Like, people would just ask me, how am I able to be successful from like my background, and that sort of thing. And so I would show them my personal practices, and my colleagues and people on my team would say, Ayori, I can't believe you do this. You should sell this. Like, people would buy this. And so that's really kind of how it happened. And so I started with just internal teams, working with internal teams, and people finding a lot of value in that. I had one of our heads of partnership asked me to give a big presentation at Dreamforce, and they didn't ask me to talk about my day job. They asked me to talk about my passion, which is life model. And so I did that, and I was in front of an audience of executives, like 1,000 executives. And so then like that created a huge audience within the Salesforce ecosystem, our customers, about what I'm doing. And so then customers started coming to me and asking me to come and speak and asking me to come and help them implement different solutions. And so that's kind of how that whole thing happened. It really wasn't me like sitting back and masterminding it. It was me being me.
Right. So you shared with a colleague some of your thought leadership on life models, and then colleagues overheard and asked you to do larger trainings in-house.
Yeah.
And when there were opportunities for Salesforce to be a thought leader on stage, we can talk about Salesforce stuff all the time, but maybe we can kind of expand the scope of things that we're talking about so Salesforce can continue to be a thought leader in other areas, and they asked you to then speak.
Yeah. And I think that comes, when you start to think about things like influencer marketing, and how a great company is great when everyone who works with them, their customers, their partners become great. So, it just so happened that I created a product that is really focused on maximizing human potential and helping people do their best, be their best at work, be their best in their personal life, be their best with their family. And so it worked really well. It was very complimentary. And that's really how that came about. Like, everyone who I talked to, from the very, very successful founders and boards of directors, they're always like, I need this solution.
Got it. Great. Okay. So I want to, Ayori, do you have other things here that you want to cover? Because if I also want to see kind of what questions people have and make sure I can field them to you as well.
Yeah. One thing I just want to make sure I cover is, like, if you want to try any of this out, this is my overall methodology that I created. So it's essentially an entire process from design, discovery, decision making, and developing. And so that's a really cool thing. I'm actually, I just finished writing my book. It's off to the editor right now, so it'll be published soon. So if you want to be able to learn more about what this is and how it can help you, there'll be stuff on the website that you can find, both on selfpreneur.com as well as on lifemodel.co. And so this is one of our core products that you can purchase. It's a physical canvas. It's a poster board. You use it with sticky notes. It's very design thinking oriented. And somebody has to be talking about design thinking this week, right?
Yeah, later on, I think tomorrow, we have folks who have worked on the Google Ventures Design Sprint team talking about design.
Excellent. And so this is essentially how you apply design thinking to your life. And then if you want to try out our beta app, you can just go to lifemodel.co.
Nice. Very cool. So any questions that folks have, throw them in here. I will see if we can get them answered for you. I know there was one question about someone was saying Salesforce might be one of a kind to accept you as balancing both your personal work, usually anything created on company property or resources belonging to the company. can be sort of seen as an excuse for termination. And so people were just sort of commenting on that. But I think you answered kind of already.
That's true. That's true. But mostly that is really defined. That is really designed to prevent people from competing with the company. If you are a photographer and you take amazing photos and then you invent like this great camera, but you work at a, I don't know, some other kind of widget company, they're not in the photo business, they're not going to care about that intellectual property you built because it's completely different from their business. So you have to be very careful about what you're doing and making sure that it's complementary rather than competitive. The other thing is that depending on the state that you live in, you also need to look at the state laws. And California, I live in California. California has the more flexible laws in that way that can support these sort of things. And you will hear about this usually with people talking about entrepreneurship, wherein folks are, behaving like entrepreneurs inside of a company. So Salesforce isn't one of a kind. There are all sorts of companies doing this. I would venture to say that every company is doing this if they have great employees, because this is what great talent does. Great talent doesn't just do one thing. I have colleagues who run beef farms, farming some of the most expensive beef in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And they're also, running things here as well. So there are lots of people doing it. People don't always talk about it, but there's lots of people doing this. So do not believe that this is something that's not possible.
Got it. So there's another question in the chat that says, what's the business model strategy? Can you kind of recap again? I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, how you make money with your business.
Yeah, so right now our main target is the enterprise business, and it's been a really great target because we can build solutions. Every solution is a large investment. Once we close that deal, it's a large investment, and we get to build product for our customer, and some capabilities of that build gets to be incorporated into our larger code base, which we're able to reuse. So we have our own intellectual property, and then we have customizations that we build for our customers. And so that's really our business model. And with that, I haven't needed to take venture capital. I haven't needed to, do a whole ton of, crazy friends and family rounds.
Yeah.
I'm building the business based on my customers.
Yeah, customize it for one client, do a 100K approximate deal, and kind of be done for, the year, a couple months, or whatever it might be.
Exactly. And then just continuing to flip that, with other customers. And I think even more relevant than just thinking about the business model is like, what's your sourcing model? Like, how do you actually deliver these kinds of things, especially if you don't have a huge team? So because I've worked in software for so many years, I've worked in software for the last 20 years. I have lots of other groups that I can leverage to pull in talent on short notice and to deliver different capabilities. So I don't have to carry people on my staff.
Got it. You pull people in when you have a client that says, yes, I signed the contract. You go and grab friends or people that you know and trust. They work on the project, and then they're off working.
Exactly. So keep the cost down, but you can, continue to refine and build your product.
Got it. Somebody also was asking about just kind of the general structure of the way that your technology works. Does it work like a canvas? So let's say I'm a company that is licensed to this. Now all my employees go in and they fill out different areas, and it kind of produces some sort of result for them. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have apps where it's built on the same methodology of the life model Canvas. But it's digital, so they can enter this information in, they can share it with managers, they can share it with people publicly inside their company. They can use it, they can print them out, they can do all this stuff, but it's digital, right? And this is really powerful because people can more easily see over time how things change. They can run reports and things like that. the other side is the physical product business, which is the paper canvases, the books. We're developing a lot of other things. We're developing books. We're developing, notebooks and planners and things like that are more physical tools.
Yeah. How do you manage? It sounds like you have a lot of different product lines, and I'm just trying to think about, you already have a 9-to-5 job, you're running this business that has multiple product lines. How do you manage and juggle all of that?
I build based off of what is most relevant at the time. So okay. I have a large vision, right? Like in everything you do, I think it's important to come in with a large vision, because this is what's going to keep you sustained as you go through it. And then you break it down to the small chunks. Okay, what would it take for me to roll out a certification program? What would it take for me to roll out a consumer-based app? Right? You go through these different things. What would it take for me to build, this kind of physical product? And then you just assess your customers and who do you have reach with right now? Who do you have influence with right now? And you deliver what they want. And as long as what they want is something that you want to deliver, there's nothing wrong with that. And the thing, I think some people, what some people really mean when they ask that question is how do you know it's the right thing? How do you know you're doing the right thing? And you don't. You don't know that you're doing the right thing. But hey, if you don't move, you're dead. So move.
Yeah, got it. Okay, this is so good. So you shared with us, just to kind of recap here, how you have your existing 9-to-5 job, but you've managed to help your job understand that allowing you to work on your company on the side or in addition is an asset to them, right? And kind of continue to support you in that process. You haven't been shy about that. And then also you've built kind of this framework and this view that you have in life, which can do lots of things. It can turn into an app. It can turn into a workbook. It can be a book. It can be a training program. You kind of are bundling all these things together. And you also have a business model with your app that allows you to do all that, kind of funds your work of doing all those other things, where you're going directly into enterprises. You have kind of a structure for the product, but you license it out. And you tell them, we're building this custom for you. You create all their customizations, but you're able to charge high price points for that, which funds the rest of it. Do I have that right?
You got that right. You nailed it.
It's a really interesting, really good model. I think a lot of times people think about, well, I'm going to build an app. It's going to be, if they're thinking about consumer, it's going to be 99 cents. Or if they're thinking about enterprise, it's going to be SaaS and it's going to be $200 a month. But really kind of the way that you've structured this allows you to get higher price points. Talking about business models all day, higher price points, and then you can fund the rest of the cool stuff you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and also there's a big element of having to choose not to do certain things, because if the stuff that I've built, there's some level of demand for everything that I've built.
Right.
And so, for example, last year, I didn't run any workshops, right? I only ran workshops for my executive clients. I didn't run any consumer kind of based workshops. And that was because I needed to write my book, right? And that was the priority. I was I really need to write this into a book. What's great is now that book is done, I can take that and I can spin that out into an e-course, right? I can use that to deliver more certifications so I can scale my model out with other coaches and other folks in the ecosystem. So it's just kind of figuring out what's the right foundational work to do, and how can I both monetize it as well as use it to further qualify and validate the rest of this market I'm going after.
Got it. Somebody was asking about, I think, again, I don't know if you covered this or not, kind of just the general tech behind the hood. So would you say that high level, this is fields that people type into and they kind of answer your questions around the life model, and that there's some sort of output then? How would you describe the output?
Yeah, so you type into it and the output is the model itself. So it's something you can look at, something that you can use to drive conversations. The biggest thing, for all of you who are trying to figure out how to do what you want to do in your life, what you're really trying to figure out is, how do I have the right conversation with the people that can help me. That's exactly what the tool does. Like, and when people ask me, Ayori, how have you achieved, moving from engineering to product management to sales to marketing? Like people don't do all those different things. Like, you're either one or the other. Like, how did you do that? And you don't have a college degree. You don't have an MBA. Like, everyone who you work with have PhDs and MBAs. Like, how did you do that? It's because I learned how to communicate. I learned how to help people understand what I'm trying to do. But the other thing that's in the overall framework is there's this one particular framework that we developed that's been so helpful for so many people. And it's really all about identifying your support systems. And what's important about that is that a support system is not just a support system for you. You're a support system for that work, you're a support system for them as well. And so when you communicate what's going on with you, what you're doing, you don't just communicate it from a like me. You're sharing something. You're always sharing an opportunity with the other person. And so this is the key to, okay, yes, it's a framework, right? You type this information in and then you look at it.
Right.
Well, don't just look at it, have a conversation about it. Use it to help you have conversation. Send it to somebody. Say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Just like the business model canvas, you use the business model canvas to explain your business to your advisors and other stuff. Like, it's helpful, right? Yeah, it's the same concept.
Yeah, I think this was really great. I love that you have, particularly as you talk about the underlying tech of the product, a relatively simple product and that does the job, right? A lot of times people overcomplicate things, but in your marketing and in your positioning, right, you give it labels, you talk about it as a compass, you talk about it as an operating system, and that allows people to see it in like a really new and novel way as well. So I just wanted to thank you so much, Ayori, for coming here, sharing your story, sharing how you've built. We're going to log off here, but there's a general discussion if you just go to the Apps That Code Live channel page. So if you have any other questions for Ayori, shoot them in there and we'll make sure we get them to her.
Thank you so much for hosting me, Tara. It was great. And thanks everyone for your questions. You all are awesome, and I hope you achieve all your goals.
Thank you so much. All right, we will see you guys in the next session.